Welcome to the Arch Advocate Show. On today's show, Portland, Oregon police get dethroned by Antifa and Black Lives Matter. A bunch of fat women and fat dudes that have magenta and fuchsia colors in their hair have dethroned and usurped the authority of the Portland Police Department, and we are going to dive deep into that also on today's show. Netflix completely just bastardizes the story of Adolf Eichmann in The Final Solution, or if you're in a country in Europe, it's called Operation Finale. Completely missed the point on that story. We're going to be talking about that and how it ties into the Portland Police Department. And then we're going to get into some Bible stuff. And by Bible stuff, I mean, like if you were a demonic devil, how would you go about destroying Christianity? How long would it take? The answer is about 3.5 hours. I'll get to that. But first, I want to give a big shout out to a listener, Dean. I believe his name is Dean Martin, because on his Twitter page, which is at GeoWashAxe, By the way, Dean, I have no idea what that means. There's no link to a website or anything. I guess it's just GeoWashAxe. I don't get it. Please explain. But anyways, listener Dean, who's got Dean Martin all over his, as his profile pic and whatever. Good choice, by the way. Everybody loves somebody sometime. Dude, I can sing, man. I can hit those notes. I can croon, yo. Dean, he spread out the good word of the Arch Advocate podcast on a few different pages, and he constructed a tweet for me. And I don't know, I'm still getting used to Twitter. I don't know how to put together a cool looking tweet like the way that he did. But he put it out on a few different pages and got me a couple of hundred new followers in hours. I mean, within hours. And Dean, I just want to say, dude, thank you. And now that I've mentioned your name and your Twitter page, at GeoWashAxe on Twitter, now you're famous. I just made you famous in front of all your friends on this here podcast. That's how fame works in the new era. Thank you so much for that, Dean, and thank all of you that responded to that and said, "Hey, I'm gonna listen to this guy's podcast." If you're new to the podcast, if that's you, if you found out about this podcast because of listener Dean, or if you're just new because you're new, listen. The whole thing is, number one, this is an interactive podcast. I want you to participate. I want you to come on the show, discuss things with me, argue things with me. You know what I mean? Give me your point of view so that other people can hear it. Community. Look, we are in very strange times, indeed. In our lifetimes, I don't think anybody alive right now has seen Stranger Times. And maybe people that are 100 years old, but this is it for us. This is our time, right? This is our, Germany in the 1930s. Right, this is our, Stalinist Russia, right? This is you know what I mean. These are strange times, and it's going to get weirder. We're going to need each other. We're going to need community. We're going to need to reaffirm and solidify our faith. Right, find out what we truly believe, why we believe it, and be certain in it. So that's just my way of saying, look, join in the community. Come on my Twitter page, come on the Telegram group. If there's a link on my Twitter page for Telegram, come join the conversation over there. Be a part of the show, and spread the word. Look, listener Dean, new guy, right? Comes on, helps me out, right? Helps the show out. Now I'm talking about him. That's how this works. Look, I don't need Joe Rogan numbers. I don't need 6 million downloads per episode. I would certainly not object to it, but it's dude, I don't need that. I need 20,000. Right? And I know that there's more than enough people out there for me to get to that place. So spread the word, help me out, join the show, come on the show. Now, what we do on the show is we take a pragmatic look at spiritual things, right? Now, what I mean by that is like, look, it's a difficult thing to start getting into the conversation about holy versus profane and angels and demons and, you know, what demons are and all that sort of thing. But there's a pragmatic way to look at that, right? Like just very simply, like when you see somebody on the street, like a homeless person that is clearly mentally not well, you know what I mean? They're mentally ill and they're babbling and talking to themselves. Like we know nowadays, like, well, that's mental illness. It's schizophrenia or whatever. But it's like, yeah, well, you know, 2,000 years ago, they just called that a demon. They meant the exact same thing, though. Like they knew that there was, you know, mental illness and you know, people had palsy and people had, you know what I mean? Like they knew, but it's just like that's how they conceptualized it. And it doesn't take away from the spiritual nature of it. And so like we have to look at what's going on around us as being a very spiritual and very physical thing simultaneously, right? And one thing I wanted to point out in light of what's happening, before we get into like the Portland police thing, I'm going to say this, but it's going to tie very much into to what's happening, you know, in the Portland Police Department, what we saw over the weekend. Oh, by the way, Pastor Brunson is free, thank God. Thank you, Jesus. But look, if you were to look at it as if, you know, when you see politicians like Dianne Feinstein running up this false flag, a lie, right? She had this lady with a story that was, you know, supposedly 37 years old, and they decided to run with it. Now, why would somebody do that? Is it for good or is it for evil? Right? Like if you're an atheist listening to this, it's like, okay, cool. Well, what do you call that? What do you call that? Don't listen to me. I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. I have a very particular point of view on things. What would you call that? Oh, that's just politics is normal. Okay, you think that's normal? You think it's normal to try to make somebody look guilty of rape for political ends? Like that to you is normal. Okay, well then, you know, we can hang out, we can be friends, but you're not allowed in my house or around my kids. You know what I mean? Like that's crazy. And one thing I want to get to before we get into this is sometimes I get emails. And by the way, if you want to send me an email, you go onto my website, archadvocate.com, arch-advocate.com. And you can go down and subscribe to the email list, and you can send me messages, and most likely I will read them on this podcast, no matter what it is. Just don't use any F words, right? But one thing, something that is like a semi-reoccurring thing is that people will write me and say, hey man, you kind of sound like you're being divisive. Like you're telling people like they need to pick sides, Republican or Democrat, right? Or pick sides, this ideology versus that ideology, right? Because that is, divisiveness is, it's something that has to be looked at. And let me qualify my stance on this by reading a little bit of C.S. Lewis to you. This is about a paragraph, right? C.S. Lewis wrote a book called The Screwtape Letters, right? And it's the Screwtape Letters is a conversation between two demons, and the elder demon is the uncle, and his name is Screwtape, and the other guy is his nephew, and he's the younger, and he's like, he's writing to his uncle, and he's like, oh, how are we gonna, bring about Satan's will and all this stuff, and so it's the Screwtape Letters is a conversation between these two demons, and if you have not read that book, or if you have not read that book in quite a while, you need to read this book, because it's a very pragmatic look at a very spiritual problem. And let me read this. This is just one quote. Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis in 1942. It says, "Dear Wormwood, my dear Wormwood, Wormwood is the name of the nephew. Be sure that the patient remains a patient, and not as in somebody who takes their time, but patient as in the like the sick person that the doctor's taking care of. My dear Wormwood, be sure that the patient remains completely fixated on politics. Arguments, political gossip, and obsessing on the faults of people they have never met serves as an excellent distraction from advancing in personal virtue, character, and the things the patient can control. Make sure to keep the patient in a constant state of angst, frustration, and general disdain towards the rest of the human race in order to avoid any kind of charity or inner peace from further developing. Ensure the patient continues to believe that the problem is, quote, out there in the, quote, broken system, rather than recognizing there is a problem within himself. Keep up the good work, Uncle Screwtape. End quote. Now listen, we are living in very divisive times, right? Now, the thought here, and by the way, like you have to read the whole book, but like the thought here is keep people divided from one another, and keep people fixated on other people so that division can keep living on, and so that the individual cannot develop. Now, Christianity, right, this walk in, quote, the way. By the way, for you, if you're not new to the show, if you've never heard this before, Christianity wasn't called Christianity for the first, very long time. Decades and decades. People were not called Christians. They were called the people of the way, because Jesus said, I am the way. And so Christians were called the way, the people of the way, right? And those of us who walk in the way, it is our job as followers of our Master Jesus Christ to consistently bring our issues within ourselves before God, bubbled up to the surface, so that they can be met with the cleansing light of the Almighty and be dealt with and eradicated. When you read the Bible, it's like, particularly in America, we have been taught that the Bible is for the whole world, and it is a subscription or a prescription on how to get other people to do what they need to do, but it's not. The Bible is written for you, right? Jesus Christ came and died for you, right? When you read John 17, right, it's Jesus's last recorded prayer, and he's saying, listen, I came and I was faithful to the 12, even to Judas, the son of perdition, all that. I came for these 12 so that they might know you, the Father. Know you, the Father. He doesn't say I came for the whole world. He says I came for these 12. Right? And then he goes on and for whoever else will hear me, whoever else gets this message that I brought, I came for them too. But it's look, it's a very personal thing. You and we have to develop as Christian people. So anything that comes along in our lives that makes us look at other people and be like, look at those people, that's somewhat forbidden. But on the other hand, there is a distinction between good and evil, right? When you see the Democratic Party importing people into our country and subsidizing, giving those people money to come into our country and destabilize our union, it's okay, well, I'm sorry, but you're acting as an enemy. When you trot out some lady that has, that shows up and makes $1 million on GoFundMe, and pretty soon she'll have a book deal, and she got to be on TV for 2 weeks, and she's making false rape accusations. It's well, that's clearly evil. That's not a mistake, right? That's not confusion, whatever. That's just no, you're being evil, and I cannot be a party to that. The Democratic Party right now is espousing socialism, which has killed over 100 million people in its lifetime. Right? It's like, okay, well, then you're other. You know what I mean? I'm not going to focus on you. I'm going to focus on me. But, as I'm doing that, I'm going to be focusing on myself and my relationship and my walk with Jesus Christ so that I become better, and also so that I don't become like you. I don't want to be affiliated with a party that is trying to normalize pedophilia and normalize socialism. Right? So as we talk about this like divisiveness, it's like, as Christian people, we need to be very careful. Jesus Christ said, look, if you call your brother a worthless person, right? That's what that word raka means, right? Like if you, what does he say? Like if you say to your brother, you fool, then you should be, brought before the council, right? Like you can't be calling people a fool. And there's like, I could do a whole sermon on just that. Like what is a fool and why is it that you would be brought to the council and all that other stuff. I'm not going to get into that. But right after that, he says, but if you say to your brother raka, and raka, it's like, it's a term, it means like to spit or to spit on and to say like you're worthless, like you're not even human. If you dehumanize your brother, if you say about a person like you are worthless, like you're not human, Jesus says, then you are in danger of hellfire. And it's one of the only places that, like, Jesus only spoke about actual hell, right? Like when he when he says Gehenna, like that Gehenna was a place, right? It was where they used to take the trash and burn it. But like when he talks about actual like hell being a specific like destination, he says, if you say to your brother you're a worthless person, like if you dehumanize your brother, then you are then in danger of hellfire. But notice when you read that what it doesn't say is like, it doesn't say that you can't do it. It just says like, be careful. If you call somebody a worthless person, you are in danger of hellfire. You're walking a very peculiar line, right? And there is times like when Germany unanimously decides, well, not, I mean, there were Germans that fought, Adolf Hitler, but, the Third Reich was a pretty big organization. And it's like those people had decided like, okay, we're going to go with Adolf Hitler here. We're just going to exterminate the Jews and the Christians and the black people and the gypsies and, whoever. It's like, okay, now I have to look at you and say, Raka. Right? You have dipped underneath whatever it is that makes us human. You are subhuman. You're no longer human, and now we have to, the United States and Great Britain and other people, like now we all have to come together and come over to Germany and kill you because you cannot be on this earth with us anymore. That's what it means. And like what Jesus was saying is like, boy, you better be careful. You better be careful if you're calling people worthless. And I strongly recommend that. It's like, look, there's going to, I'm going to talk about this in regard to what happened with the Portland Police Department. And we have to look at this as a strategy, but ultimately, like, what did the Portland police actually do? And how does all this tie into like a great spiritual battle? And how, what do we do? How will we respond when these Antifa terrorists, according to the Department of Homeland Security, and Black Lives Matter, and Pound Me Too, and all these people, what do we do when they escalate their violence? They've already killed people. They've already shot up a softball game. They sent rice into James Mattis's office and Ted Cruz's office. It's like, dude, these people are ready to kill. And it won't be long until they escalate. And then what? Then you will be forced into a position to look and say, Raka, you are a worthless person, and we can't have you around because you're a danger not only to yourself but to everyone around you. So going into the Portland Police Department, first of all, what happened? Okay, I'm going to read you this. This was a news article just the other day. It says Portland mayor stands by the decision to allow Antifa to block traffic and hassle motorists. Now, listen, in the state of California, where I'm from, I don't know how DMVs work in other states, but in California, if there is an accident, you are actually expected to, not required, but you are expected to guide traffic until the police show up. Right? Like, that's an expectation. It's not an obligation. It is an expectation. If there's an accident and the flow of traffic has been uninterrupted and you're fine, then you are expected to intervene and guide traffic, right? Until the police show up. But that's not what happened in Portland. The police were there the entire time. And Antifa and Black Lives Matter were there guiding traffic and harassing motorists as the police looked on. Now, this is a big deal, right? Now, why is it a big deal? Well, because you have to look at everything when it comes to the police and, different like social engineering and even like anything that has to do with like government. You have to look at everything as being a strategy, right? But when you drive to work, you hit certain traffic lights and certain stoplights and whatever. Well, those traffic lights, those are run on an algorithm, and they are placed strategically by civil engineers, and they run on timers because it's like, well, we have a plan. We have a plan. We need to get, the reason why, the lights don't change as fast midday is because, in the morning, lights, turn green and turn red a lot faster than they do at other points in the day. And the reason why is because there's not as much traffic at other points in the day, right? It's all engineered. So you have to look at if the police were given orders to allow Antifa to do that, a terrorist organization, you have to know that was a plan. That was a planned event, planned by the planners of that city. Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler came under fire over a viral video showing Antifa protesters blocking traffic and harassing drivers, but he says he supports the decision by the police to watch from a distance without getting involved. Okay, so what he's saying is that as mayor, he doesn't have any authority over his own police, which I find horrifically suspect. All right? No. You're the mayor, and the police chief works for you, guy. This was an order from the mayor. Don't get it twisted. Lies. I was appalled by what I saw in the video, but I support Portland Police Bureau's decision not to intervene, he said at a press conference. The whole incident will be investigated. Now, this didn't happen by accident. There is no possible way this happened by accident and without your knowledge. Now, why do this, right? Why would you do that? If this is a strategy, right? If you can accept that, like, look, traffic lights, the city's water, the city's electricity, like everything having to do with public works, the Department of Waste Management, right? The people who come and pick up your garbage, all that stuff, the street cleaners, like all of that stuff works like a clock. Nothing is by accident. There's people, they're called civil engineers, and they go to college for a long time, and then they come out, and then a city hires them, and they tell the people, like, look, we're gonna set the traffic lights up on these algorithms, and we're gonna have, this much water for, residential homes, and we're gonna have this much water for businesses, and then we're gonna have this much water for farms, and we're gonna, like, it's all planned, and it's all a strategy. And the strategy is whatever it is, right? I mean, in a perfect world, it is to keep your particular society progressing, but you have to look at what happened in Portland as a strategy, as a strike, if you will. Now, I love, as a United States Marine, like I love the history of war and studying strategy and all that sort of thing. So what could possibly be the strategy here? Right? Why would you do what could you possibly accomplish by doing that? And I may be missing some of the alternatives, but I think the strategy that I have, and it's like, think about it this way, like, if it was you doing it, what would you be trying to accomplish? Right? If you were the evil person behind it, what would you be trying to accomplish by doing that? And I think it's pretty clear that what they're trying to do is cause an event where listen, Oregon is full of all kinds of different people. Portland is pretty much packed to the rim with only one kind of people, but the rest of Oregon is, that's a bunch of lumberjacks, right? Oregon's big on lumber. The coastal part of Oregon's very, or at least they used to be big on lumber. Those are people that go hunting. Those are people that vote Republican. Those are, you know what I mean? Oregon has a lot of very hardy people in it, right? So the idea would be, if I was the evil mastermind, it would be, well, how about this? We tell the police, just let, Antifa and Black Lives Matter are coming. They are going to start letting traffic flow, even though there's no car accident or anything like that. You are to stand down and allow these terrorists to act in your stead. You are to allow them to do your job, which you are paid to do, which you are entrusted and armed by the citizenry of Portland to do. You are to stand back and let the enemy take over. Why would you do that? Well, because there are people like, the guy that's now known as Rufio, the guy that had that spectacular knockout hit on that Antifa guy. Well, Oregon, the entire state of Oregon, and plenty of people in Portland are people like that. They're hardworking, conservative-minded people who love Jesus, and they won't stand for that. They know that. They were betting on it. And they bet this mayor, again, this playing stupid, and by the way, you should go look at this guy's picture. And you'll look at this guy's picture and think, geez, did I pick on that guy in high school? I mean, he's drank the soy, for sure. But the idea would be is let us stand here and declare to the people that the police will not have your back. The police has Antifa's back. And that will drive people, normal people, to the point of violence. And those Antifa people are on tape, right? On digital recording, having, collapsible police batons, which are illegal to carry, by the way. They had weapons. And there's enough people out there like me where it's like, if I'm driving through your town, Portland, if I'm armed and if I'm with my family and you are a part of a known terrorist organization, and you come mobbing up on my car where my 2 babies are and my wife, you are going to die. And then it will be on the news. And then the mainstream media will say, look at these evil conservatives killing these people who are just expressing their First Amendment right to the freedom of speech. That's the demonic plan. That's what happened in Portland. That's what's going on right now in Portland. People, you think this is over because we got Judge Kavanaugh through there? You think this is over because the Mueller investigation is a living joke? Now, listen, this is far from over. You think that, listen, I'm predicting a huge red wave on November 6th. I know George Soros has paid a lot of money to bring about another plan, but I don't see him winning. And on November 6th, we're going to have a lot more Republican senators and congresspeople and governors and whatnot. But even then, far from over. These people are playing an evil game. These people have reached, this evil has reached such high levels of our government. We've already talked about on the show, John Brennan was the head of the CIA. He is a communist. He's an actual communist. Like, he believes, like, dude, communism, this is the way to go. We need 100 million people to die of starvation. I love communism. That's John Brennan. He was the head of the CIA. Hillary Rodham Clinton was this far from becoming president of the United States. You think that evil is not everywhere? Now listen, I love policemen, right? I've told you guys this before. My uncle, like, who raised me, he was a sheriff and he was killed and whatever, but like, policemen and sheriffs and marshals and all law enforcement, like, that is authority, and authority is from God. But just because authority is from God doesn't mean that everybody with authority is from God. Dianne Feinstein has authority that is from the Lord. And she is of the devil. She lies. She is on a quest for power. That is the most dangerous kind of person, is a person who seeks power. And now we've got the mayor of Portland saying, oh, I'm just finding out about this. I had no idea the police were doing, you know what I mean? It's like, no, the police work for you, Mr. Mayor. And furthermore, like, what I wanted to get into is, like, why would the policeman do that? Right? You have to think about this. There's a lot of you that are listening that served in the Marine Corps, you served in the Army or Navy or Air Force, like, you know, or you probably remember a little bit, you know, what was involved in the Uniform Code of Military Justice, right? And when you are going through recruit training and through your life in the military, like, you learn you do not have to follow an unjust order. You always have to follow orders unless that order is against the law or unjust or whatever, right? Like, if you're in a battle in Afghanistan and you take over this village, and then your commander comes in and says, listen, we're just going to execute all these women and children. It's like, you know that is an unjust order and you don't have to follow it. Right? Now listen, you want to get into the ugly truth of, like, you know, what happens sometimes in the military, like, you know, the massacres and rapes and whatever. Like, there's a lot. I could get way into military history, like the dark side of it. There's sometimes that happens where people give unjust orders. And the thing is what's even worse than that is most of the time people follow those orders because they don't stop and think. They don't think deeply. And why is it that people don't think deeply? And it's like, well, like in the case of these policemen who have completely, right, these cops that were on the street right there, those people were following unjust orders and they knew it. Why would they do that? Why would they turn their back on the American people, especially during these times when it's, you know what I mean, when it's Antifa, when it's clear that these people are terrorists and they're terrorizing old people on the street and they're just standing there letting it happen? How does this happen? Why does this happen? It's very simple. Those people are employed. Those men, those policemen and women that stood by and let Antifa terrorize the elderly that day, they are employed. They draw a salary, a good salary. And they have medical and dental and vision and a 401k and a pension plan. Oh, if I say anything, if I rock this boat, I could, dude, I'm 9 years in, man, another 11 years, and I get to retire. Buy myself a fishing boat, move to Michigan, go out on the Great Lakes and just go fishing every day. Buy myself a bigger boat, go out to British Columbia, go calico, go get calico whenever I want. Go halibut fishing in the Great North. You know what I mean? Like that's why these people, they are beholden to their masters. Their food comes from their mayor. Their food comes from their chief of police. And like a dog, they're not going to turn on their master. Because if they do, they don't know where their next meal is coming from. It's this kind of loyalty that causes, an otherwise good Christian German young man to say, yeah, I guess killing the Jews is the right thing to do. That's how it happens, right? It's lack of thought. It's lack of personal ownership, right? And when you do that, when you give up your personal responsibilities to self-development and standing up and doing the right thing and protecting the weak, or in this case, protecting the elderly, when you do that, you give up, you forfeit your humanity. Raka. You forfeited. You had a job to do as a human being, and you forfeited it. You didn't just fail to do it. You forfeited it. You knew what you were doing was wrong. You did it anyways. You gave up your soul, because if you did, no more food for your family. No more kick-ass medical program. No more sweet, sweet pension plan after 20 years. No. The police chief just said, we're going to let a terrorist organization do our job for us in the middle of town so that everybody can see it. People, this is far from over. This is just another example of just next level evil, but there is way more to come. Way more to come. What do these people say? What do these policemen say? What will they say if you were to ask them? I was just doing my job, man. I was just following orders, which is going to segue into my next segment. Adolf Eichmann. Adolf Eichmann was the guy who planned like all of the transportation and putting Jews into concentration camps and the disposal of those people. He was the architect of all of that. There's a movie on Netflix right now called The Final Solution, and it is a complete bastardization of like what really happened. So I don't recommend that you watch, because it's just another attack on Christianity. Like they paint this picture like the Germans, the Third Reich, were all these like Jesus-loving, God-fearing people that were just they just sincerely believed that these were the actions that were going to be pleasing to the Lord. It's like, dude, that's not like. This is what happens when you don't impress on your children to read books, read history, and find out about these people. Adolf Eichmann, he was found, he escaped Germany, and he moved to Argentina. He moved to Buenos Aires. And he was caught in 1961, right? And he was tried, and he was hanged. I believe he was hanged, or either that or firing squad. Like, he was found guilty, but like during his trial, he kept saying, like, I was just following my orders, man. I was just doing what I was told, man. You can't blame me. This was all coming down from Hitler, man. I was just a soldier. All right, that's giving up. That is forfeiting your soul. That is forfeiting your humanity. When you say, like, well, I was just following orders, well, then you're in that, by saying that, you confess that you knew it was wrong. And that you are just following orders, man. What do you want from me? I'm just a little squirrel in the world. Like, that's the big nut up there. It's like, okay, well, you're not really saying it, but what you're really saying is like, you knew it was wrong and you did it anyways. You didn't stop and say, no, I would rather die. I would rather die on my feet than live on my knees like this. And this movie completely just did not, they didn't quote, like the only thing that they quoted Eichmann as saying was like, hey, I was just a soldier. There were other things that guy said, pure evil stuff, like the main guy that caught Eichmann. They were flying Eichmann back to Israel so that he could be tried for crimes against humanity. And the guy that caught him, and I apologize if I completely bastardized this quote, but the guy that caught him was sitting across from him and he was talking with him and whatever, and he just asks him, because Adolf Eichmann had a son, and all the people that caught Adolf Eichmann, they were all Jews that had lost family members in the war. In concentration camps. So he's sitting there talking with him, and he says, he finally comes to the point where he asks him, he's like, look, like, dude, you have a son, and I have children. Like, what, like, when you were killing all of those people, like, what do you think is the difference, like, between your son and my children? Like, how could you lose sight of humanity so badly that, like, you yourself had children and you see that, I have children. Like, what is he just asked him, like, what's the difference between your son and my son? And Eichmann just looks at him like, why don't you just ask me what 2 + 2 is? Like, is this supposed to be a profound question? And he just looks at him and says, well, when this is all over, my son will still be a human being. Right? He's sitting there with the guy who caught him. And Adolf Eichmann's just telling him, he's like, you're not even human to me. You want to know that you want to know why it was so easy to kill 12 million people in concentration camps, 6 of which were Jews, the rest of which were Christians and black people and gypsies? You want to know how easy it was? Real simple. They weren't human. That's what's in all of our future here, people. That's the enemy that we are up against. We are up against a people who have forfeited their humanity. And you're going to have to pick sides. And the side here, the side that you're going to have to pick is the humans versus the subhumans. These people have no regard for humanity. And I'm not just talking about Antifa people. I'm talking about people in the government who are very much looking forward to killing anybody who doesn't agree with them. You don't believe me? Look at the string of bodies behind Hillary Clinton, but I'm not going to get off on that. The enemy that we're up against here is they're not playing. And this thing that we saw in Portland, you may have just seen it as like a blurb on the news and looked at the video on Twitter or Facebook and thought, oh, that's weird. There was a military strategy involved in that. What was that strategy? It was to get something to pop off. To get that 70-year-old man to pull out his gun and shoot that guy that had the collapsible police baton on him who was smashing his car. Had that been me, I'd have shot him. In the context of, like, if I was with my family, if I had my boys with me and my wife, it's like, dude, you're putting me in a position where it's like, I'm either going to let you potentially kill one of my sons, or I have to kill you. Guess who's going to go? That's what they were hoping for. They were hoping that somebody like me would roll through town that day, so that they could have their piece on the media of, look at the evil conservatives that are slaughtering these peaceful progressives who are just using their First Amendment right to speak their mind. That was the strategy. It's demonic, and it happened right in front of us. Now, the third segment of this show is something I like to call Bible stuff. I try to do it at the end of the show, but it doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes it happens at the very beginning. But this ties in. I had this thought, I meditated on it for a long time, and this ties into everything. It ties into Adolf Eichmann and 1930s Hitler, Germany. It ties into what happened to the Portland police officers who capitulated to turning their back on their own society and turning their back on their own humanity and not standing their ground and saying, you know what, I would rather get fired and that my family be homeless than to stand here and betray the trust of the citizens of these people and betray the oath that I took to protect these citizens. This all ties in. And I've said this many times before. It's never very well received, but you want to know, you want to know how long it would take to destroy Christianity in America? I have a theory. I have no proof. It's just a theory. But given what you saw the Portland police do, which is a phenomenon that has happened many times throughout history, what we saw in Portland happened in Germany. People just went along with it. People just said, you know what, I mean, I guess, I don't know. Those are politicians and they're kind of on a different level than me. I think I'm just going to let them do whatever they want to do. You know what? The same thing has been happening to Christianity for a long time. And Christianity in America right now there is a particular vulnerability that Christianity has in America is that it would take, in my opinion, it would take about 3.5 hours to destroy it. 3.5 hours is about how long it takes for you to metabolize food. All right? When you listen to this show, you're probably driving on your way to work and you probably just ate breakfast. In 3.5 hours, that food will be metabolized and you're going to start getting hungry again. Now just imagine there's no food, right? Have you ever been without food? Have you ever been without food and had to go more than a day without it? Against your will, right? Most people have not. Most people, have you ever fasted? Even for health purposes, like as your doctor ever told you, like, listen, I need you to go 3 days without eating. You can't eat anything. All you can have is water. You can't take any vitamins. You can't take anything. You can just have water because we need to take your blood and run these tests. And if you eat anything, it's going to screw up the test. Have you ever done that? Probably not. Most people haven't. And it's fine. But let me tell you something, that after 3.5 hours, when you start getting hungry, if you do not have access to food, your brain, right, something bubbles up in your DNA where it's like, I must secure my next meal. And things get a little weird at that point. They get a lot weird. And I fear for Christianity in America because it's like, listen, we've become these people that have allowed our political system to get this far out of hand. And it's to the point to where I believe that the only thing that you would need to weed out most of the Christians in America is just cut off their food supply. And just say, hey, we've got food over here, but not for the Christians. Right? And who would you be with your children? Right? You've got kids you got to feed. They're not in on the joke. They're not responsible for anything. They're innocent, and you're their father. And all you have to do to get some food for your children, whose blood sugar's all out of whack now because they haven't eaten in 2 days, all you have to do is walk through that line and walk up to the guy with the clipboard and say, no, I'm not a Christian. Be no harm in that, would there? Nobody's going to see. What does it really matter anyways? I know what the truth is. I know that I'm a Christian. I'll just tell this guy, no, I'm not a Christian. And then I get I get a bag of rice and I get a bag of beans and I get a piece of chicken, whatever. Now I can feed my family. You do it once, you do it twice. Now the next thing you know is like, hey, listen, we're going to get rid of the guy with the clipboard. We just need you to wear an armband that says, I'm not a Christian. Now you've already done it you've done it a number of times. No, I'm not a Christian. You've already said it out loud a number of times. Now you're getting into a repetition. No, I'm not a Christian. No, I'm not a Christian. After all, I got to feed my kids. The majority of Christians in America would have no idea what to do if they did not know where their next meal was coming from. Most Christians in America don't have a well-developed enough prayer life to where they would know what to do in response to having no idea where their food was coming from next. And that's what I'm saying, like in America and a lot of the rest of the Western world, I don't think it would take some apocalyptic event to wipe out most of Christianity in the citizenry of Western nations. I think it would take 3.5 hours. I think it would take just long enough to let people get hungry and insecure enough about where their next meal was from, that then you could get them chanting, I'm not a Christian, I'm not a Christian. Because everything changes, man, when you're like, listen, you people, there is a panic that happens when you're fasting. It's in your DNA. You know what I mean? Like if you had a refrigerator and a pantry just stuffed with food, right? But your doctor came to you, called you up and said, hey, listen, Dean, new listener Dean or Todd or, Michael or whoever, like, hey, listen, the thing is, we got your test result back from the other day. We have to run another test. Spoiler alert, we think you might have cancer. Don't worry. But listen, here's the thing. We need to take a more pure blood test, and here's what we need you to do. We need you to drink nothing but water. Now, keep in mind, you might have cancer, and if you do, it's treatable, but we need to know for a fact. And if we do, we'll be able to treat it. Now, here's the price you're going to have to pay. You're going to have to stop eating food for 72 hours. Don't do it, or else we have to start all over again. So you have access to food, right, in this example, but you know that in an effort to save your life long term, you must not eat for 3 days. I guarantee you, about 3/4 through the way of day one, there's something in your DNA that's going to cause you to panic. Panic as if your life is in danger. It's like written into the code of your blood. And anybody who's done a true fast before knows what that feels like. It's awful, right? And by the way, it doesn't start going away till like day 4, day 5. Like day 3 is by far the worst. Day 3, like you're panicking and you're ready to start killing people. You know what I mean? Like it's that bad. It's horrific. Even if like the times that I've fasted, it's like I knew that I could have food at any time I wanted, and yet I was still panicking as if my life was in danger. And that's what you do if you want to get an entire military force, otherwise known as a police department. Right? A police department is local militia who the people have voted for and said, okay, you guys hire whoever you want to hire or whatever. They are armed, they are trained, they have equipment, they have vehicles, and they have numbers. How do you get a militia like that to turn their back on their vows, their oaths that they made to the people, and turn their back on the citizenry and allow a terrorist organization to come into their town and start acting in the seat of power that they just gave up? How does this happen? Hunger. That's how it happens. The need for security, the need for constant reprovisioning. Like, hey man, I'm a police officer. I get paid on the 1st and the 15th, man. I have to make it, you know what I mean? Like, I have to get reprovisioned. I got kids, man. I got dance recital. I got horseback lessons. I got stuff I got to do, man. Why can't you understand why it is that I, didn't say anything when my mayor said, hey, we're gonna let these terrorists come into our town and start directing traffic. And you must stand down and stand on the sidewalk and watch it as it happens. How dare you question me, man? I've got kids. You know what would happen to me if I didn't make my mortgage payment? I would be a homeless person. How dare you question me? I got a 6-month-old baby at home that I got to feed. You know what would happen if I stood up to the mayor? I'd be fired. You think I'm going to get a job somewhere else as a disgraced police officer? If I go fill out an application at the Boise, Idaho Police Department, the first thing they're going to see is that I was disgraced, that I can't follow orders. You think that looks good on a resume? Dude, I've got needs. How dare you question me? Adolf Eichmann says, I killed over 12 million people in concentration camps. Dude, I was just doing what I was told, man. You know that, by the way, that defense is not allowed in military courts? The old, I was just following orders. Nobody allows that anymore. Because so many Nazis used it to the point where the world came together and said, all right, this excuse, this I was just following orders nonsense, nope. No, we don't do that. When it comes to human rights violations, you cannot use that excuse. We do not recognize that in a court of law. So these Portland police officers who stood by and let terrorists come into their town and overrun them, no, I don't excuse you. You're not irredeemable. I'm not saying raka. I'm not saying you're worthless. What I am saying is that if you don't stand up for your humanity, you are going to enter into worthless territory. Had somebody gotten injured, like mortally injured, then I would be saying, okay, well, you're irredeemable. Because your capitulation, your surrender to evil forces has made you subhuman. That didn't happen. So again, listen, I really wasn't looking forward to recording this podcast for this reason, because it's like, man, I know I'm going to get very close to that line. Very close to that line, man, where it's like, man, how do you condemn people? How do you condemn people for being worthless? And for being no longer human? Like, that's dangerous territory. My master, Jesus Christ, said, listen, man, if you use that judgment, you are in danger of hellfire. You're in danger of hell when you use that judgment. It's dangerous. Right? Or another way of saying that, like what Jesus was saying is like, boy, you better only play that card when you're absolutely sure. And maybe I'm misinterpreting that passage of scripture. I don't know. But it seems to me like, when it comes to Adolf Eichmann, you know what I mean? It's like, well, I can't, he's given up his humanity and he has become the beast. He's become an animal. He said it. Oh, I was just following orders like a good little doggy. I'm just an animal, man. What do you want from me? I'm just an animal. I just do what I'm told. Right? That's what it means to be the beast. That's what Adolf Eichmann became. And that's what police departments around the United States are faced with right now. So let me just season everything I just said with this. Like, you better be praying. The way that you've been praying for the pastor that just got released out of Turkey. What's his name? Not Buchanan. Bachman? Oh, God help me. I can't believe I forgot his name already. The way that you were praying for that man, you need to be praying for your police, that they be protected from evil. That God would pour out his spirit on those men and women in a constant reminder that they represent God's authority, and that is a heavy deal. And you need to be thanking your policemen. If you know them, like if they're in your church or in your bowling league or in your softball club or whatever. If they're at your son's wrestling matches. Whatever. If you know that they're police, you need to go up to them and be like, listen, man, thank you so much. And I pray that you never forget like the tremendous amount of responsibility that you took on yourself when you swore that oath to protect this community. And remind them, it's fine. Like they'll be happy. Just keep in mind, man, that these are not infallible people. And God help the people of Portland, man. That was very disturbing news. Anyways, that's the show for today. Thank you so much for joining us. If you want to support the show, do what listener Dean did. Share it with all of your friends. Build a little Twitter and share it to different groups and all that stuff. I really appreciate that, Dean, and the rest of you. One of the listeners said I need to get on, Pinterest? Is that the live? One of them. I'll be working on my social media, by the way. I'm learning as I go. I appreciate it. If you want to support the show and keep it going, it costs money. So if you want to become a monthly supporter, you can go on to arch-advocate.com. That's the website, archavocate.com. You can become a monthly Patreon supporter. A couple of bucks a month. Everything helps, man. If you just want to send some dough like in a one-time thing, you can do that on PayPal. Also, keep in mind, if you are new to the show, my wife is going to give birth literally any second now. All right. So if you come on, if you wake up one morning and you're looking for the show and it isn't there, it's because my son has been born. So just keep that in mind. For you new listeners, like you just came in at like the perfect time, like right when my boy's about to be born, my second son. So if that happens, don't worry, I'll be right back. It's just, I was busy. Thank you guys so much. Let me know what you thought about the show, particularly like if you think I went over the line, I would like to hear about it, right? Like I try not to, look, these times are very difficult for everybody, right? My job is to speak the truth. My job is to tell you what's on my heart and what's on my mind. And I will never apologize for that. But at the same time, it's like, listen, everybody says stuff that's wrong or over the top or whatever. And it's like, if you feel that I've breached that line, you let me know. We will talk about it. Guarantee that. Like, I'm not afraid to take criticism. So you guys let me know. Archavocate.com is where you want to send that email. And if I don't hear from you before then, I will talk to you mañana.